Hello there, and it's a glorious day for the system's Commonwealth. We see the commissioning of the first of a new line of glorious heritage class battlecruisers, similar to the Andromeda Ascendant herself, but actually more advanced in many key areas. This ship, the Crimson Sunrise, would be the first of a new generation of advanced, powerful battlecruisers in the employ of the system's Commonwealth. But oh wait, it gone blowed up. And that sucks, and was a great shame. The vessel was built a few years after the resurrection of the Andromeda and its captain, and the efforts to restore the system's Commonwealth at that time. The Crimson Sunrise, although generally speaking a standard glorious heritage class vessel at around 1300 meters in length, and with all the general same bells and whistles, point defense systems, missile batteries, slip fighters, as we see with others, the battle blades and the enhanced sort of armor that the ships have, ship's AI helping control it, although we never get to meet, unfortunately, the ship's AI. It was powered by advanced fusion reactors, the same style of ones that were aboard the Andromeda herself. But the vessel blew up, and today we're going to look at why and what happened to this glorious heritage class ship. Before we get started though, like, share, subscribe, comment down below, and let's get into this. The Crimson Sunrise, as I said, was a glorious heritage class. In general terms of appearance, it was basically the same as the Andromeda and other glorious heritage class ships similar to her. But the Sunrise had a red and sort of black coloured hull, which differentiated it on an aesthetic level, but similar to the Pax Magellanic, I don't know if there was an actual tactical advantage to the ship's hull being this colour, and before you say it, being black against space, yet I suppose technically that would make it harder to see, but not to a ship's sensor array. And also, space is big and ships fight at very long distances. The Pax Magellanic, being shiny and gold, is just as invisible as a black ship when you're talking about the kinds of distances that these things would be throwing missiles at one another. But anyway, the vessel was due its shakedown cruise. Captain Dylan Hunt and others were aboard the Eureka Maru because the Andromeda was still a little damaged and not in any condition to make the journey. They were going for the commissioning ceremony to see the launch of this brand new Commonwealth ship. But the moment they arrived, they noticed that something was a bit off. They hailed the ship and spoke to its captain, a human by the name of Captain Grissom. Grissom was a bit of a bumbling idiot, and it doesn't go beyond my noticing that a bumbling idiot captain called Grissom in a show that was also made by the same makers of Star Trek. We also had the USS Grissom, Star Trek 3, with a bumbling idiot captain that got itself blown up. Anyway, moving along. The ship suddenly starts to go critical. The captain orders all hands to abandon ship as the vessel seems to be going up around them. They get to the escape pods, the vessel blows up. Most of the crew seem to have got out okay, but are in the escape pods that are suddenly rapidly losing air. And this is because they didn't use vitriol armor in the construction of the pods, because they figured they'd cheap out and save money on something they believed that a vessel this big and this powerful and this advanced would never use. It's escape pods. So now, what should have been days worth of oxygen had turned into hours, and it became the responsibility of the Eureka Maru to try to attach all the pods in a Suliban cell ship kind of way to share their own environmental control systems and save everyone. But everyone on board began to suspect sabotage. Now the Nietzscheans by this point were back, many of them anyway, part of the Commonwealth, and many of them were part of the High Guard. Perfectly honourable officers, but these people they grew up in the long night. They weren't quite used to the sort of codes of conduct and everything of the Commonwealth, and they weren't experienced veterans like many others were, so they turned on each other, began infighting, squabbling and bickering, and it came down to Captain Hunt and Captain Valentine to try to get them under control and stop them killing each other. It turns out that the ship's first officer, Commander Erin Shohashi, was also a Nietzschean, and a particularly fearsome one. She was instantly suspected of blowing the ship up, even by Captain Hunt. This, of course, was somewhat tempered by his sort of professionalism, but his past experience with both Nietzscheans, particularly modern Nietzscheans, and his own first officer, who had betrayed him and resulted in the fall of the system's Commonwealth the first time around and the destruction of many ships, meant he was kind of not as willing to maybe give her the benefit of the doubt as what he should have been. Turns out she was an extremely fierce and loyal officer, and she worked tirelessly to get to the bottom of what had actually happened to her ship. She was very dismissive of her existing captain, who was basically lost in one of the escape pods anyway, or maybe dead, and basically called him an idiot. Actually, literally called him an idiot. But she was from a Nietzschean pride known as the Kenja pride. Now, the Kenja were known, even amongst Nietzscheans, for being particularly vicious. They were known for not leaving enemies alive, and they were patrolling this area. Now, she'd left the pride and divorced herself from any loyalties to it, but it wasn't exactly a long stretch of the imagination to think, well, she's Kenja pride, she was raised Kenja pride, Nietzscheans being Nietzscheans, maybe. It really wasn't a big stretch. And as I said, even amongst Nietzscheans, the Kenja pride were considered vicious. Even other Nietzscheans considered the Kenja pride to be vicious. And as a result, it made her feared by the Nietzschean members of the crew because of the reputation of her pride, and by the other people because of the reputation of her pride, and her general bullish and aggressive nature in general, probably because of her upbringing in such a violent environment. The Kenja pride seemed to, as many different Nietzschean prides did after the Long Night. Before the Long Night, Nietzschean prides had been a bit more uniform in their belief system, so after it, there were many of them that they developed their own distinct kind of subculture of Nietzschean society and their own way of doing things. And Kenja sort of embraced a philosophy of absolute sort of ruthlessness in favor of anything else. But despite this connection, despite the fact that Kenja pride seemed to be coming to try to finish off the pods, it turns out she had nothing to do with it. And actually, the destruction of the Crimson Sunrise was a complete freak accident. A 1 in a million chance. A micrometeoroid managed to hit the exact worst possible point on the hull it could possibly ever hit. And it managed to get in through some intake or something, get into the ship's fusion reactors, clog them up, break them, and cause the vessel to go critical. It was something no one could have predicted, and the statistical chances of something like this happening by accident, even on purpose, it would be near impossible. In fact, probably even less likely for someone to throw a little rock on purpose to hit it like this. The idea that it did it by accident was so unlikely, no one even considered it. But after an analysis of the debris, the computer records the black box, they determined it was a complete accident. The ship blew up completely by mistake and was a great loss to the system's Commonwealth that, let's face it, didn't exactly have a lot of ships at this point. And the ship's captain may have been an idiot, but the ship was still a glorious heritage class battle wagon of a ship and was very needed for the Commonwealth, especially in the ensuing months, which were going to be a bit troublesome for the Commonwealth at this time. But there we have the Crimson Sunrise. He didn't live long, but he's remembered fondly. Not his captain, but the ship itself. Even though we never met the ship self. But the first officer, we did, and she was a fantastic officer in the High Guard, and there's nothing I can find that ever indicates that she ever betrayed the Commonwealth. Unlike Tyr and many of the other Nietzscheans, didn't try to rebuild the Nietzschean Empire and destroy the newly formed Commonwealth and forge an alliance with the Magog. Story for another time. So, there we have again the Crimson Sunrise. If you made it all to this video, thank you for watching. If you liked what you saw and you want to see more of it, please like, share, subscribe, and hit the bell notification icon if you want to get more of these videos in the future. And also check out the full Andromeda playlist that is listed somewhere up in the corner, I assume, by this point, if I remember. And also, all the Star Trek that's on this channel, because the two franchises are pretty damn close. And there's a lot of Star Trek to be found on this channel. And with that said, you're at the end of this video now. I thank you for watching, and bye-bye. I'd just like to say a thank you to everyone for watching that video. I hope you enjoyed it. I really enjoy making these. If you did enjoy it, please consider giving a like, share, and a subscribe, and maybe checking out the other videos on the screen right now. And in the description box below, there are links to my other social media accounts.